I am Nia, 32 years old, and at this moment I am staring at 20 million reasons why my husband deserves to be locked away in a federal prison. For 5 years, I had carried the burden of our marriage, constantly defending the man I loved against my own family who labeled him a gold digger. I had given up my relationship with my billionaire father just to build a future with Marcus. So when Marcus informed me that we were bankrupt and federal agents were closing in, I did precisely what he instructed. I disappeared. But the person who discovered me shivering in a filthy gutter was not the FBI. It was my father, and the truth he carried with him destroyed everything I thought I knew. Before I go on with this story, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. Smash that like button and subscribe if you've ever had to start your life over after someone you loved destroyed it completely. The rain poured down heavily that night, turning the ground beneath the Interstate 85 overpass into a freezing, muddy mess. The thunderous roar of 18-wheelers speeding overhead was the only sound louder than my chattering teeth. I was curled up inside a flimsy nylon tent, dressed in a soaked sweatshirt, hugging my knees tightly to my chest. I had been surviving in this concrete jungle for 3 miserable days. My husband Marcus had dropped me off here in the middle of the night, his hands clenched so tightly around the steering wheel that his knuckles turned pale. He had looked at me with tears in his eyes and spun a tale that sent chills down my spine. He said his logistics company had come under federal investigation because of a massive accounting mistake. He insisted we were millions in debt, that every account was frozen, and that arrest warrants had been issued for both of us. He told me to leave my phone, ID, and credit cards behind in the car so no one could trace us. He promised he only needed 72 hours to meet a specialist, file emergency bankruptcy documents, and clear my name. I was his wife. I loved him. I stepped out of the car into the darkness, trusting the man I had given up everything for, believing he was shielding me from federal prison. I sat in the mud for 3 full days, jumping at every noise, living off 2 bottles of water and a pack of old crackers. I waited for my husband to return and rescue me, but Marcus never showed up. Instead, the powerful headlights of 3 large black SUVs sliced through the shadows under the overpass. The vehicles veered off the road, their tires churning through the mud, and created a barrier directly in front of my tent. My heart pounded violently in my chest. Terror gripped me. I thought the federal agents had finally tracked me down. I scrambled backward, preparing to be arrested and taken away. The heavy door of the front SUV opened. A man stepped out into the pouring rain, his expensive leather shoes sinking into the sludge. He was not a federal agent. He wore a perfectly tailored suit, his posture strong and authoritative. It was Winston Davenport, my father. I hadn't spoken to him in 5 long years. Our relationship had ended the day I chose Marcus. My father, a self-made millionaire who had created a shipping empire from nothing, had taken one look at Marcus and called him a scheming gold digger. He warned me that Marcus only saw my future earnings as a financial risk consultant and my connection to the Davenport fortune. I had accused my father of being a controlling elitist who couldn't accept me being with a hardworking black man trying to build his own company. My father gave me an ultimatum. If I walked out to marry Marcus, I would lose my inheritance and be cut off forever. I walked out anyway. For 5 years, I carried the full financial load of our marriage. I worked 80-hour weeks as a corporate risk analyst, paid the mortgage, and poured my entire salary into Marcus and his string of failing businesses. I tolerated the endless emotional manipulation from his mother, Vonda, who lived in a house I paid for, yet constantly criticized me for being too focused on my career to be a good wife to her son. I endured it all, desperate to prove to my father that my marriage was successful. Now, seeing my father standing in the rain, I felt overwhelming shame. I expected him to mock me. I expected harsh judgment. I slowly rose to my feet, wrapping my arms around my freezing body, ready to defend Marcus one final time. "Dad," I whispered, my voice barely audible above the rain. "You need to go. Marcus is in serious trouble. His company collapsed. The feds are after us. We have nothing left." My father didn't look at me with pity. He looked at me with a fury so intense it seemed to pause the rain. He strode forward, ignoring the mud that ruined his expensive suit. He didn't reach out to embrace his lost daughter. Instead, he pointed a firm finger straight at my face. "What in God's name are you doing in this dump, Nia?" he thundered, his deep voice echoing off the concrete pillars. "Where is the $20 million trust fund I transferred to you last month?" I froze. The icy wind cut through my wet clothes, but I barely felt it. His words didn't make sense. I shook my head slowly and stepped back. $20 million? What are you talking about? I haven't taken a penny from you in 5 years. We are completely broke, Dad. Marcus lost everything. He told me to hide here so I wouldn't get arrested. My father let out a harsh, humorless laugh. Broke. Lost everything. He reached into his coat, pulled out a thick manila envelope, and slapped it hard against my chest. The envelope flew open, and several official-looking documents spilled out, landing in the muddy puddles at my feet. "Pick them up," he ordered, his voice sharp as a whip. "Read them. Read what your so-called hard-working husband has been doing while you've been freezing to death under a bridge." My hands were numb and trembling. But my father's rage forced me to bend down. I picked up one of the soaked papers. It was an official bank statement from an exclusive private wealth firm. The account was in the names of Nia Davenport and Marcus Cole. I hadn't even known this account existed. I scanned the numbers through the heavy rain, my professional background as a financial auditor taking over. The transaction history revealed total destruction. 4 weeks earlier, a $20 million wire from the Davenport Family Trust had arrived, followed by rapid withdrawals. $3 million sent to an offshore company in the Caymans. $5 million moved to a luxury real estate firm in Buckhead. $2 million transferred straight into a private account belonging only to Vonda Cole, my mother-in-law. There were payments for luxury cars, designer jewelry, and elite country club memberships. The final balance showed $0. My breath caught in my throat. The numbers blurred as raindrops fell on the page. I looked up at my father, the wet document shaking in my grip. "You sent me money?" I asked, my voice breaking. "After 5 years of silence, you sent me $20 million. My father's expression softened slightly, revealing the deep pain beneath his anger. "I heard your consulting firm downsized your department," he said quietly. "I knew you were carrying that parasite all by yourself. A father never stops worrying about his daughter, Nia. I set up a secure trust and released the funds to a private account linked to your social security number. I waited for your call. I waited for you to tell me you were safe, but you never did. So I had my security team trace the money. They found the transactions, and then they found you living under a bridge." I stared at the zero balance again. The reality struck me like a speeding train. Marcus hadn't lost anything. He had stolen the money. He and his mother had somehow bypassed the security measures, forged my approval, and drained $20 million of my father's money. There were no federal investigators. There was no bankruptcy. Marcus had deliberately driven me to the worst part of Atlanta, taken my identification and phone, and abandoned me under a bridge with a complete lie. He left me there to starve and hide from imaginary police, just so he could escape with my family's fortune. The man I had defended, the man I had sacrificed my relationship with my father for, had discarded me the moment he got the cash. The drive from the highway overpass to the Buckhead neighborhood took 20 minutes, but sitting in the passenger seat of my father's car, it felt endless. The silence between us was heavy, filled with unspoken apologies and 5 years of lost time. I gazed out the window as rain lashed the glass, watching rundown buildings give way to luxurious estates. We stopped in front of a grand wrought iron gate. It opened immediately, allowing us onto a long, curving driveway lined with palm trees and elegant lights. This was the exact address Marcus had mentioned a month ago when he claimed he was meeting a bankruptcy lawyer to save our house. Now I understood the truth. He wasn't meeting a lawyer. He was finalizing the purchase. My father shifted the car into park right at the grand entrance. He kept his hands on the wheel and stared straight ahead. "I'll wait here," he said softly. "This is your mess to handle." I stepped out into the freezing rain. My damp sweatshirt stuck to my shivering body, and my sneakers were covered in thick, foul mud. I climbed the marble steps to the mansion. The massive, solid oak double doors were closed, but I could hear loud bass music thumping from inside. I didn't look for a doorbell. I didn't care who saw. I lifted my mud-caked shoe and kicked the center of the doors with all the rage that had built up over 3 days. The heavy wood burst open, slamming against the walls. The music stopped instantly. A rush of warm air hit my freezing skin. I stepped into the luxurious foyer. A giant crystal chandelier hung from the high ceiling. Waitstaff in sharp white uniforms froze, holding trays of champagne and gourmet appetizers. The living room was filled with people in designer clothes laughing and drinking, and right in the middle of it all, relaxing on a custom white Italian leather sofa, sat the man who had promised to love and protect me. Marcus wore a silk shirt, a diamond watch sparkling on his wrist, with his arm casually around a beautiful woman in a tight red dress. He was laughing without a care while I was supposed to be hiding from federal agents. Before Marcus even noticed me, the crowd parted. Vonda, my nightmare of a mother-in-law, strode toward me. She wore an emerald green gown, her hair styled perfectly, and a diamond necklace that glittered so brightly it turned my stomach. The same woman who had cried in my kitchen 2 months ago begging me to pay her bills was now acting like a rich socialite. Vonda stopped a few feet away. Her eyes scanned my soaked, dirty appearance. She didn't look surprised. She looked disgusted. She raised her crystal glass and deliberately poured the expensive champagne onto my muddy shoes. Well, you actually had the audacity to bring your filthy fantasies into my new home. Vonda sneered loudly enough for everyone to hear. I told Marcus you were losing your mind, but showing up here looking like a stray proves it. You are completely unstable. Just look at yourself, Nia. You are a total embarrassment. Marcus finally stood. He patted the woman in the red dress and walked slowly toward me. He didn't look guilty, he didn't look shocked. He looked bored, like someone dealing with an annoying problem he had outgrown. Nia, you need to leave right now, he said smoothly, acting like the tired, patient husband. I told you it was over. My lawyer sent the divorce papers to your sister's house yesterday. I can't keep handling your breakdowns. It's exhausting. Vonda moved closer, her voice full of fake sympathy for the silent crowd. My son deserves peace, she announced loudly. He deserves a woman who can give him a family, not a barren, unstable burden who destroys every business he tries with her wild accusations. You held my son back for 5 years, Nia. You forced him to endure your crazy episodes. We're finished taking care of someone who refuses to get professional help. 3 days ago, those words would have destroyed me. The jab about my infertility, the lies about my mental state, the betrayal from the man I loved. But standing there covered in mud, I felt only cold, sharp clarity. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I ignored Vonda completely and stared directly at my husband. I don't care about your divorce papers, Marcus, I said, my voice steady and sharp. I care about the $20 million you stole from my family trust. I want to know exactly how you got past the security checks to transfer it into your mother's name. The guests gasped and whispered. Marcus didn't panic. He simply laughed, a low, arrogant sound that chilled me. He walked to a marble table, picked up a leather folder, and pulled out a single legal document. He held it up just out of my reach. What money, Nia? He asked with a cruel smile. You mean the generous charitable donation you approved? I stared at the paper, my mind flashing back 4 weeks. I had suffered a severe panic attack after Marcus said we were being audited by the IRS. My chest tightened, my vision blurred, and he rushed me to the hospital. They had given me strong sedatives. I remembered waking up dazed, barely conscious, while Marcus held my hand and asked me to sign hospital release forms so he could handle the bills. I had signed where he pointed, trusting him completely. I had signed my life away in a drugged state. At the bottom was my signature, clear as day. Marcus tapped the ink. Don't you remember signing this power of attorney when you were hospitalized for that panic attack last month? The doctors gave you heavy medication, babe. But the notary was right there. Everything in your accounts was legally transferred to the Cole Family Investment Fund. You gave it to us willingly, Nia, and now you don't have a single cent left to fight with. The heavy mahogany doors of the Buckhead mansion slammed shut behind me, the sound ringing through the cold rain. I stood on the porch, the forged power of attorney still fresh in my mind. Marcus and Vonda had legally taken $20 million from me while holding my hand in a hospital room. I turned away from the house. The cold cut through my wet clothes, but the fire inside me burned even stronger. I didn't return to my father waiting in the SUV. I needed to see the one person who was supposed to support me no matter what. My older sister, Chloe. Chloe lived 15 minutes away in an exclusive gated community in Alpharetta. Her life was full of perfect lawns, country clubs, and luxury. I paid a high fee for a rideshare, my wet clothes soaking the seats as we drove through the storm. I walked up the neat brick path to her grand front door. I rang the doorbell, shivering, hoping my own sister would let me in and help me fight the forged documents. I expected Chloe to open the door with open arms. Instead, Trent, my white brother-in-law, answered. Trent was the director of a top private wealth management firm. He stood tall in a cashmere sweater and designer pants, holding a glass of bourbon. He didn't move aside to let me out of the rain. He blocked the doorway. His eyes slowly looked me up and down, my muddy shoes, soaked sweatshirt, and shaking body. The disgust on his face was obvious. He didn't see family in need. He saw an unwelcome intruder. Before I could speak, Trent took a slow sip of his drink. "I told you, Chloe," he called back, his voice full of superiority. "I told you this would happen. Uneducated black women like her can't keep money. Go back under the bridge. This upscale white neighborhood isn't for people bringing street problems to my doorstep. You're breaking neighborhood rules just by standing here looking like a homeless person." I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms. "Get out of my way, Trent. I'm not leaving until I see my sister. Marcus stole 20 million from the family trust. He forged my signature on a power of attorney." Trent laughed mockingly. He leaned against the doorframe, clearly enjoying my pain. "Marcus didn't steal anything you didn't give him, Nia. You were stupid enough to hand a desperate man the keys to everything. Don't come running to us because you have no financial sense." Footsteps sounded inside. Chloe appeared behind Trent in a silk robe, holding white wine. My older sister, the one I had shared everything with since we were children, looked at me with the same disgust as her husband. There was no sympathy in her eyes, only pure annoyance. "Chloe," I begged, stepping forward slightly. "Marcus forged my signature while I was sedated in the hospital. He and Vonda took 20 million from Dad's trust. I need to use your computer. I need to access the federal database and freeze the accounts before they send the money overseas. Please let me in." Chloe didn't open the screen door. She sipped her wine slowly and shook her head. "You always ruin everything, Nia," she said coldly. "You ruined your relationship with Dad to marry that loser. You ruined your career trying to support him. And now you're ruining my Tuesday night with your broke chaos. I am not allowing you to drag that chaos into my house. My family is calm and stable. We are well respected in this community. I will not let your bad decisions spill into my life." I stared at my own sister, completely stunned. She was choosing her perfect suburban image over my survival. She stood beside a man who had just thrown racist comments at me, agreeing with every word. "You are turning me away?" I asked, my voice dropping to a whisper. "Your own sister is standing here in the freezing rain, telling you she was just robbed of millions, and you are worried about your neighborhood rules. You brought this on yourself." "Nia," Chloe snapped back. "Trent warned you years ago that Marcus was a financial disaster, but you always had to be the clever one, didn't you? You always had to prove you could save him. Well, just look at yourself now. You are pathetic. Go back to Dad and beg for forgiveness." "We are finished here," Trent smirked, raising his glass in a mocking toast. "You heard her, Nia. Run along. Leave the wealth management to the real professionals." He started closing the heavy oak door, but in that final painful moment, my eyes flicked past Trent's shoulder. The view shifts over Trent's shoulder, focusing sharply on the entryway console table under the warm glow of a designer lamp. Resting casually on the marble surface was a thick leather folder with the gold-embossed logo of Trent's private wealth management firm. The folder was open. My eyes are trained to spot irregularities. I am a risk auditor. I detect financial red flags faster than most people read a simple page. In the split second before the door closed, my gaze locked onto the top document in that folder. It was a wire transfer confirmation. I saw the routing number. I saw the exact amount. $5 million, but it was the sender's account name that sent ice through my veins. The transfer wasn't from a regular corporate client. It came from Cole Logistics, Marcus's shell company. The heavy door slammed shut, the lock clicking firmly into place with a final sound. I stood alone on the porch as rain poured over me, but I no longer felt the cold. The puzzle pieces crashed together in my mind with brutal force. Marcus was a smooth talker, but he wasn't a financial expert. He didn't have the offshore connections or the banking expertise to bypass federal security flags on a $20 million transfer. He couldn't have moved the money so quickly without triggering immediate alerts. He needed help from inside. He needed a director of private wealth management who knew exactly how to structure the transfers, conceal the assets in shell companies, and clean the money. He needed Trent. Trent's arrogance now made total sense. He wasn't just insulting me, he was celebrating. He was standing there mocking my intelligence while actively laundering the very fortune Marcus had taken from me. And Chloe, did she know? Was my own sister involved in the scheme to leave me with nothing and claim my inheritance? I stepped back from the door, my heart beating like a steady drum in my chest. They thought I was just a broken, desperate wife. They believed sending me back into the storm would crush me completely. They had underestimated the woman standing on their porch. Trent thought he was the expert wealth manager, but I was the auditor who created the risk systems his firm depended on. They hadn't just stolen my money. They had used my own financial frameworks to do it. I turned away from the spotless mansion and walked down the driveway into the heavy rain. I didn't need their shelter. I didn't need their sympathy. I pulled my wet hood over my head, my mind already running calculations, mapping out the banking connections and spotting every weakness in Trent's corporate defenses. The tears had vanished. The victim they expected had died under that bridge. It was time for the predator to rise. The heavy oak door clicked shut, the sound ringing like a gunshot through the cold rain. I stood on the clean brick porch of my sister's mansion, staring at the brass knocker. 5 minutes earlier, I had been a desperate woman seeking safety with my own blood. Now I was the victim of a planned family betrayal. Marcus had taken the money, Trent was cleaning it. And my sister Chloe, the one who used to braid my hair and swear we would always protect each other, was sipping white wine while watching me sink. I stepped back off the porch, and the storm swallowed me completely. The camera circles me in a slow, steady arc, capturing the precise moment the last bit of my innocence died. I didn't drop to my knees. I didn't scream into the thunder. The crushing pain that had frozen me for the last 72 hours simply disappeared. It was replaced by a cold, empty precision. They thought they had broken me. They believed taking my dignity, my husband, and my family would leave me helpless. They forgot that you should never corner a financial risk auditor with nothing left to lose. I walked down the long, curving driveway, my muddy sneakers splashing against the wet pavement. I reached the bottom of the hill where my father's black SUV was still waiting in the shadows. He had followed me from Marcus's property, waiting to see if his daughter would finally collapse. I opened the heavy door and slid into the passenger seat, soaking the luxury leather. My father looked at me, his jaw tight, expecting tears. He reached for a towel, preparing for an emotional breakdown. I didn't take it. "Dad," I said, my voice completely steady and emotionless. "I need you to make a phone call." He lowered the towel, his eyes narrowing as he studied my expression. He noticed the change. "Who are we calling, Nia?" "I'm not asking you to recover my money," I told him, staring straight through the windshield at the endless rain. "I don't want your lawyers, I don't want your contacts. I need a secure room at Davenport Logistics. I need a multi-monitor station with military-grade encryption. And I need your top-level security access to the federal financial database." My father leaned back in his seat. The corner of his mouth lifted into a slow, dangerous smile. He recognized that tone. It was the same one he used before launching a major corporate takeover. "What exactly are you planning?" he asked quietly. "I'm going to do my job," I replied, wiping the cold rain from my face. "I'm going to audit my husband, my brother-in-law, and my sister. I'm going to dismantle their financial worlds completely, within 2 hours." I was seated inside a secure underground server room at Davenport headquarters. My damp clothes were replaced with a crisp black turtleneck and slacks that my father's assistant had provided. 4 large monitors glowed in front of me, casting a cool blue light across my face. My fingers moved rapidly over the keyboard. This was my territory. For 5 years, I had worn myself out managing corporate risk portfolios, spotting tiny irregularities in financial records, and creating predictive models to prevent fraud. Trent thought he was brilliant because he wore designer Italian suits and handled wealth for Atlanta's elite. He was about to discover the difference between someone who manages money and someone who destroys the systems that hide it. I began with the routing number I had memorized from the wire transfer document on Trent's table. It was a single thread, and I was going to pull until their entire operation came undone. I bypassed standard banking firewalls using my father's corporate access, diving deep into the transaction data. The first layer of Trent's setup was glaringly obvious. He had spread the $20 million through quick micro-transfers, distributing the funds across multiple domestic accounts under Marcus's shell company, Cole Logistics. It was a typical smurfing method meant to stay below federal reporting limits. It was careless, arrogant, and an insult to my skills. I traced the domestic accounts in under 20 minutes, but the money hadn't stayed there. Trent was shifting it offshore, layering it through corporations to make it impossible to follow. I cracked my knuckles, my eyes scanning the screens as lines of code and transaction records flew by. I tracked the digital trail to the Cayman Islands, then to a holding company in Panama, and finally to an anonymous trust in Luxembourg. Trent had built a maze of shell companies, each layer owning the next, creating endless dead ends designed to exhaust any investigator. I leaned back in the chair, sipping strong black coffee, studying the network diagram I had created on the main monitor. It was an intricate, elegant structure of corporate deception. It was built to be unbreakable. A typical investigator would need court orders, international warrants, and years of legal battles to break through. But I wasn't a typical investigator. As I examined the screen, a sharp realization hit me like electricity. I leaned closer, my face inches from the glowing displays. I pulled up the organizational structure of the Luxembourg Trust and compared it to the routing patterns of the Panamanian firm. I reviewed the algorithmic rules controlling the asset movements. My breath caught. I let out a dry, humorless laugh that echoed through the silent server room. Trent had not created this maze.
Craving shocking revenge, chilling horror, and jaw-dropping relationship drama. If you love revenge, horror, and jaw-dropping relationship stories straight from Reddit, make sure to like this video, subscribe to reddittalestime, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next story. More twists, more drama, more tales, coming up next.